All right. I will call this both end of the year edition, special edition, however you want to say it. Here we are at the end of another school year. It is May 23rd, 2026 today. And I want it to be a special edition because I'm going to get some things off my chest, things that substitute teachers would really like to say to the teachers. Now, I've got a lot of teachers that listen to this podcast. I love them all. They're great. And this is in no way going to be critical, but some ideas about how maybe you could look at some things differently to make us substitute teachers feel a little more comfortable. Let's start right off. And I didn't make a whole lot of notes. I've got it all in my brain. And I did that on purpose because I kind of want this to sound like it comes from the heart. I mean, I'm not doing very many of these podcasts anymore. So I want them to kind of be special. I want them to be thoughtful. Here's the first one. Let's talk lesson plans. Now, I'm not talking about the lesson plans that are very unorganized. I very rarely get any of those anymore. I did for some reason 8 years ago when I first started substitute teaching. It seemed like I got some disorganized teaching plans, and that made it even worse. But maybe that was really my inexperience. And once I had some experience, I understood them better. But let me tell you teachers something about lesson plans. I'll say this by giving a shameful plug to another podcast I do now. I do one called DVC for Adults. That is a travel related podcast. DVC stands for Disney Vacation Club. You can fill in the blanks. I won't go into any more details than that. But in when I do that, I have to make sure that I'm out of my head. That sounded bad, didn't it? I have to make sure that I'm not just thinking like I think, but I think like what the listener's going to think. Same with these lesson plans. I know you all do a great job of putting your lesson plans together, but remember when we come in there, we may read something and it doesn't make sense to us, even though when you wrote it down, it made total sense to you. So I would just caution you to try to think back, teachers, to when you were either a sub or a student teacher and you were trying your hardest to do exactly what the teacher wanted you to do. And the more I don't know, simplistic's not the right word, but the more we did, more the teacher could do to outline exactly what you needed to do, the better off it was. Sometimes it just doesn't mean certain things to us. For instance, if I'm looking at a lesson plan and it says go to this program, well, if I've never used the program, that might be more difficult than it needs to be. So think about your lesson plans. Try to make sure that everything the substitute teacher needs, they're going to have. The great thing about subbing elementary school, in a way, they're really more helpful than the higher grades because they want to be more helpful. When you get to middle school and high school, you've got, the most helpful students right now in middle school this past year were the ones that were in elementary school the year before, and they were used to helping. If I ever got lost in a classroom in elementary school this year, the kids knew exactly what to do. If I did something out of order, the kids knew that I was out of order. And it seemed like the kindergarten and first grade were the most adamant of the bunch. No, Mr. Collins, we don't do it like that. We do it like this. And then I would look back at the teacher plan, and sure enough, they were right. And I really have to be careful. I like to tell stories. They like to hear stories. But the younger the kids, the more they also, it reminds them of their own stories that they want to share. So I'm just saying, teachers, your lesson plans, make sure that we know what you're talking about. And hopefully, if we don't, you can tell the teachers. Now, or the students, I'm pretty savvy now with the terms they use and how to, for instance, if you're not careful, teachers, you'll come across who sub that doesn't realize you could take one of the tabs that's on your screen right now and drag it from your desktop to the screen where the kids can see it and back and forth like that. It's so easy to do now, but the first time you've ever had to do it, it is a little bit more difficult. So think all that stuff through for us, dragging tabs onto playful. Right now, I mean, the last couple of weeks, of course, and I assume it's like this all over the country, we have less intense lessons going on. In fact, we've got more time probably outside on the ball fields because it's the end of school and you want those kids to leave with a lot of camaraderie, and it's just been a fun couple of weeks. They've worn me out. I'm tired every time I come home. I love watching them. I love hearing them sing, and the elementary school I have has both graduation ceremonies for kindergarten and fifth grade. So that's a lot of fun. So, teachers, make sure your lesson plans, even though it makes sense to you, make sure that your teacher knows what that means to drag a screen over to the computer, what this program means, what your time slots are, all that good stuff. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about this, teachers. And this happens, I'm going to say, every week of substitute teaching. I'll be going along, I'll be helping the students, and you've got all these tabs open at the top of your screen, right in order of how you want to do them. And in fact, some of you all, I would say most of you all, do a PowerPoint presentation that's got the exact screens. Pardon my need to take a drink there. My throat was getting dry. So you will often say, click this tab for this project, this tab for this project, this tab for this project. More often than not, what happens is if I don't touch the screen, or I don't touch the tab on your computer, or I don't click the keyboard, or I don't move the mouse for maybe 5 minutes, well, your screen shuts down. And if I don't have your personal login, which I don't want, but if I don't have that, I can't get back into all those open tabs you have. My suggestion is this. First of all, I've always just gone and gotten a teacher, and the teachers usually have each other's login, and that helps. And I would recommend this though. When you're going to set us up with tabs, and each tab does a different thing, and each tab is important, well, do that through the substitute teacher login. Most all schools have a specific login for substitute teachers. It's usually the initials of the school and sub, and then it might be something as simple as Turkey Day 2025 or something like that. So and usually it's on the badges that they give us. Sometimes it's the teachers leave that login for us. But if you've opened all those tabs on your own login, it doesn't do us any good if it shuts down, because the only way we can log back in is through our substitute teacher login, and then those tabs aren't there. So I would encourage all the teachers, please open your tabs by logging in as a substitute teacher. And then if it shuts down, I know how to log back into it and get right back to where I need to be. Teachers, it seems like I'm not going to blame young teachers because that's not nice. But remember that I've said this before. I grew up in a generation where young people respected old people just because they were old. I mentioned that in class. I think it was a third grade class. And one of the students said, yes, my parents make me do that too. But some of the younger teachers now, they are less, tolerance, not the right word. They wish the older substitute teachers were more like they were or they are. They wish they could understand where they're coming from. I was at a school this week. We went outside for about an hour and it was very generational. Me, I it's so funny. I'll sit on the sidewalk out there, and before I know it, I've got four or five kids just sitting around me and talking to me. I'm glad they feel that way. They can just come up and talk to me. But some of the subs, you could tell what generation they were from by what they were doing. The ones that were still in their 20s, the entire hour we were outside, they were looking at their smartphone. They didn't even participate with the kids. I'll throw some football. I love doing that kind of thing. In the middle of those two, it's off and on. I get the impression from some teachers that they, it's not disrespect. What is the word I should use here? Condescending, maybe even a too strong a word. Some teachers just look at not very many of them, but some teachers you can tell they just look at substitute teachers as inconveniences. I've had one teacher say, don't do this, this, and this. Well, that was my personality. I might as well go home. Don't tell stories, don't tell jokes. That ain't happening. And to be honest, I don't care whether you like it or not. I'm going to do that part. As long as I get their lessons taken care of, I'm going to be the same friendly, joking, sarcastic substitute teacher that I've always been. So that's just a fancy way of saying teachers, be tolerant of substitute teachers, be understanding of substitute teachers, give them ideas from a positive standpoint. I've got one teacher, she is a librarian, and I have really come to enjoy not just subbing for her, because obviously, if I'm subbing for her, I don't see her, but she has been so helpful for me this year. There was one day where I wanted to try to leave my job 5 minutes early. 5 minutes only, it's only the 5 minutes where you're standing in this room with the students waiting for their buses because I needed to pick my granddaughter up. And she took care of it for me. She went out of her way to take care of that for me. And man, that makes a substitute teacher feel so needed. I guess maybe that's what I should have said from the beginning. Teachers, try to make your substitute teachers feel needed. Try to make them feel they're an important part. I have gotten plenty, plenty, plenty of thank yous this year for doing it. But it's, I guess the younger we trend, the less thank yous that are there because, some of the young teachers don't know exactly what they should be doing either. And it just rose from there. So I hope you had a good school year. I get kind of choked up talking about it being over because I got to wait all the way to August now to get back in that classroom. It was such a friendly feeling the last day I was there. I had the ability to walk around while my first graders were in art class, just to walk around and see all the classes. And some of them had their yearbooks. They wanted Mr. Collins to sign their yearbook. That's so cool to me. I joke with them when you're rich and famous, are you going to remember Mr. Collins? Are you going to remember me? Oh yeah, Mr. Collins will remember you. And it's really kind of funny. I'm coaching a youth volleyball team right now. They're 9 to 12 years old. I enjoy that so much. I'm jinxing myself here, but we're undefeated at the moment. And a lot of the players I have on my team, I've also had in the classroom, and that means so much. It's easier for me to remember names because the girl that's the captain of my team, I've known her for 2 years and probably see her at least twice a week, every week of the school year. So that makes things go well when you know the students that well. I joke with students. I sub over 1,000 students, different students a year. I'm not going to remember your name. I joke that I sometimes forget my wife's name and just call her, hey, you. But that's not true, by the way. And don't tell her I said that. But teachers, just think about what your substitute teachers need. Substitute teachers, I've got a Facebook group now called Substitute Teachers Lounge. There is over 7,000 members on it now, and it's almost too many because there is so, I like them to be honest. I want them to say what they want to say. Lots of bickering. What I do when that happens, I just pause the site. I pause the page for about a week, let them cool off, and then we go back into it. You can't say anything political. You can't say anything, well, let's just leave it at political. Controversial. I don't mind controversy as long as it's within the parameters of what that page was set up for. So, end of the year, you all have a good summer. We're going to California in October, so that's not really summer. That was supposed to be an earlier trip that we had to change. I am going to Florida in August, the beginning of August. My wife's going to Montana to hike through the glaciers with her friends, and I always, she does that once a year, so I always just use that as an excuse to go to Florida. Me and my son did this last year and went to Epic Universe. So fun stuff. Enjoy your summer. Make suggestions to the teachers as to what might make your life easier. Can I hand out your candy? Should I not hand out your candy? When they come up and say, can I have a reward for this? The teacher always gives me a reward. Well, make sure you let us know whether or not we can give them rewards, and that will help us a lot. So that's it. I'm probably done until maybe August. I've only done 3 episodes this year. I wound it down. We're well over 6 digits in download, so that's pretty awesome to me. So the rest of you have a great summer, and we'll get back together soon.